In a small provincial town where rain almost always seemed to be the eternal companion of the inhabitants, there were legends of shadows that came to life in the light of the moon. It was said that when the full moon rises over the ancient rooftops, nature whispers the forgotten pain of ancestors, and the streets are filled with the cold voice of the past. It was on such a night, when time slows down, that a story began that will be remembered by all who have ever heard the quiet howling of the wind outside the window. This story is about a boy named Michael, whose fate is inextricably linked to a ghostly dog that appears in the darkest moments of his life. Michael grew up in a house on the outskirts of the town, in an old ramshackle building where time seemed to have stopped. His mother, a gentle and kind-hearted woman, always sheltered her son from the harsh realities of the world by telling tales of heroes and miracles. But behind every fairy tale there was a truth. This world was dominated by prejudice, loneliness, and fear of the unknown. From an early age, Michael felt his soul sinking amidst the indifference and cold stares of others. At school, where every day was a battle for recognition, the other kids would squint at his dark face as if it didn't belong in this world. His inner voice, full of pain and self-recrimination, sounded more and more often in the night as he lay alone, listening to wall after wall whispering forgotten pleas. One day, on one of those long rainy nights when the sky seemed to split into pieces, Michael was returning home after a late class. The slum streets, reflected in the puddles, seemed an endless maze of shadows and boredom. Along a deserted alley, under the flickering light of the street lamps, the boy noticed a faint silhouette that made his heart slow down. It was a dog, but not an ordinary dog. Its outline was blurred, as if composed of rippling fog and night shadows. The creature's eyes glittered with a faint, almost ghostly light, and its fur seemed weightless, as if it could disappear into the night. Michael stopped in the middle of the road, unable to move when a chill seemed to run down his back like someone's invisible gaze. In that instant he heard a distinct, almost muffled barking sound coming from nowhere. It was no ordinary sound. It was a cry of anguish that penetrated his very soul. At first the boy thought he was having a nightmare, but the sound was real, and it echoed through the deserted streets. The following nights became a nightmare for Michael. Every dark alley, every wind noise and raindrop reminded him of that sinister creature. Sometimes he saw the dog sitting outside the house, near empty windows, as if waiting for someone. Sometimes she would appear running along an abandoned street, leaving a trail of mist and cold behind her. But in their eyes, his fear seemed like a child's fantasy, and his words a mere caprice of the imagination. It went on like this for a long time. The voice inside his head repeated the same words, like a call to an inevitable fate. "You will not escape me. You will be with me forever." Every night in his dreams, he saw the bottomless eyes of the ghostly dog, heard its quiet but piercing howl, and woke up cold with fear. His heart beat more frequently, and even daylight could not dispel the shadow that haunted him. Years passed, and the fear turned into an almost physical pain. Michael became withdrawn, his friends disappeared, and the smile on his face dissolved, giving way to emptiness. His gaze became sullen and tormented, and even the brightest moments of his life faded from the invisible weight he carried in his heart. One day, in the darkest midnight, when the rain was pouring down like a bucket, Michael, unable to bear his inner torment, went out into the street. He walked as if in a trance. Michael tried to tell his parents, not noticing the passers-by and the lights of the night city. Suddenly, amidst the rain, he saw a silhouette that made him stop. The ghostly dog stood on the dusty side of the old road, its eyes burning like frightening torches. It approached slowly, and with each step the world around it faded away, giving way to nothing but vast darkness. Michael felt something inside him break. His soul screamed in a frenzy, and his body froze with indescribable terror. In that moment, Michael realized that he had a choice: either succumb to the inevitable despair or try to find the strength to fight this nightmare. With a tremor in his voice, he whispered, "Why did you come to me? What have I done to deserve this agony?" There was no answer, only the hum of the rain and the low howl that came from the ghost dog. But in the back of his mind, the boy sensed that the dog was not just a nightmare, but some ancient embodiment of pain. Perhaps she was the shadow of someone's loss, the ghost of a forgotten soul left to fend for itself. The next day, Michael began writing down all his thoughts and dreams, trying to understand where the horror had come from. He searched for answers in old books, drummers of old people's stories, dreaming of finding a way to exorcise the demon. But every word he found only increased his horror and led to a new wave of tears. Time passed, and the pain grew. At school, the boy became an object of ridicule, and his every rustle, every simple thought instilled in him the fear that the ghost of the dog would be there, peering into his soul. His nightmares were replaced by vivid visions. He saw his parents, his friends, even his own reflection in the mirror dissolve into darkness, leaving only the loud echo of his own suffering. Finally, one day, during a particularly chilling night, when the moon was hidden behind the clouds, Michael decided to end it all. He stepped out onto the roof of the old house, his heart beating at an unbearable speed. As if in a trance, he looked up at the night sky and screamed into the void, "Go away, let me go!" At that very second, a sea of sensations poured into his body, and clouds appeared on the horizon, merging into one single club of gloom. A ghostly dog appeared nearby, her eyes shining with a pale light. Her presence was paralyzing. It penetrated the very core of his being. In that vague instant, the boy experienced both terror and a strange calm. He realized that his fear was part of him, and that perhaps only by accepting this pain could a way of healing be found. But in that simultaneously lurked doom. After that night, the change in Michael became visible to everyone. He was no longer the unhappy boy he had been before. His gaze was now filled with a strange mixture of pain and determination. Each new day brought new trials and new tears, but the boy learned to live with the ghost that still appeared from time to time in his dreams and on the deserted streets. Sometimes, when the rain began to pound softly on the roof, he would hear a quiet barking sound, like a reminder that fear would never completely go away, but it could be turned into strength. He began to write poems and draw pictures, where he depicted the ghostly dog not as a source of torment, but as a symbol of struggle, as a reflection of that part of the soul that is still able to love, despite all the evil and pain. The years passed, and Michael grew up to become a man who knew the price of loss and the power of overcoming. His life was filled with wounds, but each wound told its own story. In his music and who had survived their nightmares but found the strength not to give up. One foggy evening, walking through an old park, he saw the silhouette of a dog in the distance, between the trees. His gaze was not filled with terror, but rather with sadness and gratitude. He whispered softly, "Thank you for teaching me how to fight." And at that moment, the ghostly dog vanished into the night, leaving behind not the icy cold, but the warm echo of memories that helped him live and bring light to others in pain. Now the town knows the story of Michael, a boy who met his fate in the form of a ghostly dog. His story is relayed in whispers on rainy nights when one hears the quiet barking, echoing through the deserted streets, and realizes that even the worst nightmares can be the beginning of a path to healing. Anyone who faces a shadow must remember, fear is only part of the journey, and it is in overcoming terror that personal strength is born. Michael's story is not just a scary dream, but proof that even in the midst of darkness and pain, you can find a spark of light that will help you survive adversity and emerge into a new, bright dawn.